on the World Wide Web. This is the Rob Carson Show.
And by the grace of God, it is finally Friday. And looks like I'm going to be bashing it this weekend. Yeah. Wife's sister's in town. They're going to be going out. Son's out of town. Daughter's out of town. So I'm going to party like a rock star. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to sit here and do nothing. Maybe go to the gym. Anyway, welcome to the show. Please come inside. Here's the number. It's 800-922-6680. So, a lot of stuff happening in the news. Oh, did you hear the latest? Listen to this. You know, you heard the expression rats jumping off the ship. We know that Susan Rice left the Biden camp, left the Biden White House on Monday, and didn't really explain why. Well, why'd she leave the Biden White House? I don't understand. But she just decided to get off the ship, I guess. There was some rumors going around. A big Peter Navarro said, yeah, she's going to be the vice president and all that stuff. But she's left. And you know who resigned today? Rochelle Walensky, the head of the CDC, the chief propagandist for the CDC, who basically all of the COVID protocols that she presided over were ultimately proven to be absolutely false and destructive. Remember that. Every protocol that she espoused, every time that you said, I don't think she'd say, that's disinformation, that's misinformation, shut up. She presided over all of it. She gave it a rubber stamp. She endorsed it. She and Tony Fauci worked together. Don't let them try to rewrite history. So driving the news is apparently she submitted her resignation today. Will leave her post at the end of June per a CDC announcement. Well, you don't really need a CDC announcement because I just said it. She leaves CDC a stronger institution. Well, yeah, if you're talking about propaganda machine that shuts down freedom of speech and differing opinions and mandates things on people they don't need. Oh, yeah, made it a whole hell of a lot stronger. Better position to confront health threats and protect Americans. And then she says, I took on this role at your request with the goal of leaving behind the dark days of the pandemic, which you actually made worse, and moving CDC and public health forward into a much better and more trusted place. Really? Now, I think you did a really terrible, terrible job. You ruined our economy, and also you ruined the lives of millions of children and probably cost the lives of thousands and maybe even hundreds of thousands of Americans. There you go. So she's dropping off there, another rat scurrying off the deck of the SS Titanic. And then, this, I thought you should know this, Democrat voters. I thought you should know this. Your mind has been made up for you. You do not have a choice for a Democrat candidate for president. You are going to support Joe Biden. I thought I'd tell you that. Now, right now, we have a primary process going on in the Republican Party. People are throwing their hat in the ring. I get it. That's cool. That's the way it should be. Let the winner, the votes determine the winner. But unfortunately, the Democrat Party doesn't do voting anymore. They do rigged voting. They do the FBI involved. They do the deep state involved in controlling information. The Republicans, we're just going to do it. Well, provided that, the people in the Republican Party and people pulling the strings at Fox like Paul Ryan don't try to put their elbow on the scale. But this is Simone Sanders this morning on Morning Joe, who, by the way, completely down with the Russian disinformation hoax that the FBI and the CIA perpetrated on the American people, saying that the laptop was Russian disinformation. Joe Scarborough should be ashamed to show his face in public. And not just for this, by the way. There's a lot of reasons. But anyway, here's Simone Sanders saying, Joe Biden's your candidate, whether you like it or not. Doesn't matter who gets into the ring. Robert Kennedy Jr., who's polling at 20% without spending almost anything at all. Nope, not going to be it.
The sitting president of the United States of America is a Democrat that would like to run for re-election, so much so that he has declared a re-election campaign. Right. In that case, the Democratic National Committee will not facilitate a primary process. There will be no debate stage for Bobby Kennedy, Marianne Williamson, or anyone else to stand on.
So we're going to have another Bobby Kennedy in an empty chair in the debate, right?
There will be no debate.
Yeah, no debate.
The Democratic National Committee administers the debates, and they're not going to set up a primary process for debates for someone to challenge the head of the Democratic Party.
There you go. You don't have a choice. How you like that, guys? Well, hey, the Democrat Party, I mean, honestly, if you're still a member of the Democrat Party in good standing, considering their insanity on the issues and now this, wasn't it? I guess there were about 500,000 people in a campaign called the Walk Away campaign. There are 500,000 people leaving the Democrat Party, mostly people of color. And their stories were featured on Facebook until right after the 2020 election. And then Facebook took away the Walk Away movement. So basically, they electrified the razor ribbon around the Democrat encampment. So you've got to stay on the plantation, in other words. House Foreign Affairs Republicans sent a letter on Tuesday to Tony Blinken demanding more information about the department's funding of groups that censor conservative speech. I mentioned this yesterday. The House Foreign Affairs Committee Republicans noted the GEC, the Global Engagement Center, funded the Global Information Index, a foreign data-driven advocacy organization which created blacklists of U.S. domestic media voices to cripple U.S. citizen journalists and advertising revenue. The dynamic exclusion list kept media outlets like Breitbart and Newsmax and who else? One American News and Real Clear Politics and the Washington Examiner and the Daily Wire and the Daily Caller and New York Post. Told them you don't need to spend your money with them because they disseminate disinformation. Yeah. The GOP members of Congress noticed that the federal government cannot scrap the First Amendment merely because they want to curb disinformation or misinformation, but that's what they did. The First Amendment of the Constitution prohibits government officials from censoring disfavored speakers and viewpoints. Wait, didn't they make Hunter Biden's laptop disinformation? Now do you get it? Merely labeling speech misinformation or disinformation does not strip away First Amendment protections, although they told you couldn't say it, remember? And I said, yeah, I can. If the mainstream media, big social media, and the Democrat Party say that what you say is misinformation or disinformation, it means they know you know the truth. And I was right. Just because something is labeled disinformation does not strip away First Amendment protections. In other words, you have every right to say anything and have an opinion on anything. If you think the election was stolen, if you think the Hunter Biden laptop was real, if you think that Russian disinformation or Russian collusion didn't happen, you had every right to say those things. And the federal government and the deep state and big social media, they told you you couldn't, and they succeeded for a while. And I never went along. And I suffered because of it. I lost my social media followings. I'm not saying it was tremendous. It wasn't, life-ending. Government officials may not circumnavigate the First Amendment by inducing, threatening, and or colluding with private entities to suppress protected speech. 2019, Richard Engel, the very first head of the GEC after its 2016 founding during the Obama administration, they started disinformation. They started disinformatia. That means fundamental change of the United States of America. He published an op-ed in the Washington Post calling for an effective end to the First Amendment. Listen to this, guys. The basis of the First Amendment, the marketplace of ideas model, is actually not working. Marketplace of ideas is this notion that good ideas will drive out bad ideas. Well, it was kind of a mystical notion coming from Milton and John Stuart Mill, and that doesn't really happen anymore. I'm actually very sympathetic to the U.S. adopting some versions of hate speech laws in Europe. So they killed the First Amendment. They killed the First Amendment starting in about 2016. Then some things happened. Tucker Carlson started reporting on it. Matt Taibbi and others were able to get a hold of the Twitter files and expose how badly Twitter had been corrupted. It was a government agency. We owe Elon Musk for exposing this. This is really big. This is Matt Taibbi's latest Twitter files. Who helped overturn the Pentagon Papers principle? The Washington Post and the New York Times. Last December, Michael Schellenberger reported in a #1 Twitter files that the Aspen Institute hosted a hack and dump working group exercise in the summer of 2020. It was entitled Burisma Leak. Listen to this, which predicted with uncanny accuracy the upcoming derogatory story in the New York Post about Hunter Biden's laptop. So not only did the FBI and CIA shut down Hunter Biden's laptop, create this this letter with 51 intelligence officials, they literally held a big conference for news outlets so they could control the messaging. The documents Schellenberger published show at least 5 media figures, including David Sanger, David McGraw, the New York Times, Washington Post, Daily Beast. All of them were involved, worked alongside Twitter and Facebook chief moderation officers Yoel Roth, Nathaniel Gleicher, to plan a response to a hypothetical damaging expose about Joe Biden's son. The FBI knew about it. The FBI knew about the Hunter Biden laptop. This is how they C-blocked us from knowing about it. The Burisma leak exercise predicted to many of the elements of the real response to the New York Times coming Hunter Biden story, including complaints from influential Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff about its source and veracity, and public statements from former senior intelligence officials falsely raising the specter of a Russian operation. Newly discovered documents show the war-gamed, choreographed response to the New York Post piece in October 2020, which included temporary suppression by those tech platforms, Twitter and Facebook, covered it up, may have been a part of a broader plan to rethink basic journalism standards beyond just one incitement. This included junking what experts involved with a tabletop exercise referred to as Pentagon Papers principle. This has been, by the way, since the Pentagon Papers, a guiding principle for journalism, and journalism agreed to trash it. Under which, this is the Pentagon Papers principle, which journalists since Daniel Ellsberg's 1971 leak had operated under a single rule. Once information is authenticated, if it is newsworthy, publish it. And our news media did exactly what the news media is forced to do in Cuba and forced to do in North Korea. They did it voluntarily, even though we have the First Amendment. Can you believe it? You're witnessing so much history right now, and you're witnessing the worst thing that has ever happened in our history with regard to political malfeasance, election interference, and the restriction of freedom of speech. Absolutely amazing. I've got a little more of this coming up. 800-922-6680. This is The Rob Carson Show.
You've heard the big news. Fox News fired Tucker Carlson. Now, Newsmax is conducting an urgent poll asking you if it was right to fire.
Can we ever guess next hour?